You guys have tuned in for an important episode. Today we are talking about common mistakes people make in training camp that lead to a loss. And I'm not bringing up things like drinking or missing too many training sessions. Those are self-explanatory. You should already know you're not going to do that if you want to win your fight. We are talking about easy to make errors, ones that I have made or ones that I've actively put a lot of effort in to avoid. So follow along, because right after the intro, I want you to make sure you're not making any of these mistakes. Alright guys, let's get right into it. Point number one, we are talking about not challenging your cardio. What do I mean by that? Well, it's very easy to win a fight and have a great training routine, a great cardio routine. You use that again for the next fight. It helps you win. You do it again. It helps you win. But after a while, what concerns me is in not challenging yourself, your body almost gets adapted to the certain workouts you're doing. Case in point example, I used to do things called circuits. We would do push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, all these things. We'd bang them off for years. They were so hard. And then they started to get a little easier and a little easier, to the point where even though they were really challenging in the past, they were no longer presenting that same challenge to me. But then as soon as I changed the routine up, added in a few other elements, all of a sudden my heart rate would start kicking up again. So I feel like if you're not constantly challenging your cardio in new ways, you keep doing the same routine over and over and over, at some point it's going to come back and it's going to bite you. Now, if you have some routine, like, I run my sprints around the soccer field and then I finish with 400-meter sprints. Those are tried and true ones that seem to work all the time, but still, even for myself, I'll switch up the routine or I'll switch up the timing. I'll do something a little different so my body and my cardio does not get complacent. That's the big thing we're talking about here. Don't get comfortable in a routine that was once challenging and you stick with it, because bit by bit by bit, it becomes a little easier and a little easier. And you're going, wow, I just must be getting in really good shape. But sometimes the mistake that happens is, no, you're not getting in any better shape. You're just getting really used to that particular routine. You're getting in better shape for that routine. Just the same way that, if I go for a run and I feel really sharp, but then I jump in the pool and I'm just dying, I'm gasping in for air, my body's just screaming for oxygen. Sometimes switching up the routine is a good way to challenge your body, to shock it and to increase that cardio so you're always improving. Point number two, and something that can end up leading to a loss very easy, is neglecting body conditioning, taking those thudding shots. Because let's be real, you can be the most talented fighter in the world, somebody who's just so evasive, you have the fastest punches, but if you get clipped in the arms, your round kicks start coming and landing and you break down, or you get kicked in the leg and you can't walk or bounce anymore. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, you're going to be somebody that gets knocked down eventually. You have to have that body conditioning. And that's something I notice very often when I go to other gyms or I spar with new sparring partners. I go in and then start moving around like, whoa, this guy's good. And then after a round or two, he starts to crumble. He starts to break down. He doesn't have the body conditioning. So what can we do to make sure our body conditioning is on point? Well, number one, put in the sparring rounds. That's where you're going to get most of the good conditioning, assuming you're sparring fairly hard. Alternatively, you can also do low kick conditioning. I've done videos on that before. Or you can have somebody actually condition your body. Just hands up behind your head, somebody beats away on you. I used to have guys just throw round kicks against my arms at the end of training sessions just to make sure they were conditioned. And when I took round kicks in the fight, my arms wouldn't slow down. I wouldn't get that sluggish punching from getting kicked. I still want my hands to always be fast. So don't neglect the body conditioning, especially if you're somebody who is a top level fighter. You have the potential to be up there, but you got to be tough. You got to be a guy who can grind through some pain. That's just part of this sport. You will not make it to the highest level without having that asset. Next, and moving on, I want to talk about underestimating your opponent. Now, don't skip ahead, because I know what most of you guys are thinking. Oh, no, I already know about this. No, I want to talk in a certain way that might not be familiar to you. And this has happened to many high-level fighters. I'm not talking about underestimating your opponent by going, okay, this guy's not a big deal, I'm not going to train hard, and then you go into the fight feeling unprepared, or after the fight, if you lose, going, yeah, I didn't train hard. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about going in, putting in your hardest training camp. You're pushing, but mentally thinking or knowing that you're going to win the fight and just writing the guy off. I feel like underestimating your opponent, assuming you do all your cardio training, you do all the training that you need to, everything that's required, you've done it, but you don't give this guy enough respect, and mentally you write him off. You think, oh, maybe I'm just going to breeze through him, or maybe I'm going to KO him in the first round. And when that doesn't happen, all of a sudden you're in for a shock, and you might not be mentally prepared the way you would have been if you've taken that guy seriously. Never underestimate your opponent. Go in confident, go in feeling like a god. That's fine. But you still have to give this guy respect, because it's going to push you in training camp, and it's going to give you the mental fortitude you need if the fight doesn't finish like that. Another thing you can do in training camp that will end up leading to a loss is you decide to stop learning. You decide that, okay, you know what? I don't have anything left to learn from my coaches. They're not teaching me anything anymore, and I'm not really watching much in the way of fights and actively taking in information and trying new stuff. Once you stop increasing your learning curve, you don't become a better fighter anymore, you plateau, you become complacent, things are going to start slipping downhill. Maybe you're not slipping downhill, but guess what? Everybody's getting better. If you're on that flat line, everybody's getting better. They might catch up to you. Even if you're up here, they're coming for you. So you need to make sure you're always learning, you're always challenging yourself, you're always watching new up-and-coming fighters and taking notes from them as well. It would be very naive of me not to look at all the guys in 1FC, guys like Jonathan Haggerty. He's an up-and-coming fighter. He has beautiful technique, somebody that I can look to and go, whoa, what can I learn from this guy? Sure, he's younger than me. Sure, maybe he doesn't have as many titles as me, but I can still learn lots from him. Always keep learning. Don't get complacent. It will help you avoid those losses. Next, I want to talk about something I saw the former 125-pound UFC champion reference just the other day. I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Something like Davison Figueroa. Yeah, you guys know who I'm talking about. Anyway, he lost his last fight, and then recently he ended up putting out a little statement saying he was not taking his training camp not seriously. He's not saying that, like I said before. It's just his attention has been shifted. And what I want to talk about here is not prioritizing your training camp, just like this UFC champion did. Something else sort of takes priority. Oh, I opened a gym. Before I was putting 100% effort into training camp. Now I'm only going to put in 70%. Just a little bit less because, I have this other business. You have to prioritize training camp. It has to be the focus of your life. And of course, much to the dismay of our loved ones, but it's a price they have to pay to be involved with people who are in fight sports. My wife will tell you 100% that often during training camp, it seems like that's the priority, not her. Of course, I put effort in to still spend time with her, but really if it's something like there's a training session or I'm exhausted from a training session and I need my recovery time, I will skip out on other things. It's very easy for us to win a fight, and then all of a sudden be like, you know what? I don't need to prioritize training camp as much as last time because I'm on a roll. I'm on a hot streak. Things are feeling good. And all of a sudden, maybe you go to that barbecue when you're feeling a little burnt out. And then your next training session is just down a little bit because you didn't do your recovery time. Or you have a new business, something else that you're focusing on. It's drawing away your attention. These are easy ways to set yourself up for losses. Now, of course, unless you're a high-level professional fighter, you are going to have distractions. You're going to have your work that you have to go to, or school, or family, or whatever else. Those are all okay, but you still want to make sure you're putting your time and don't let those other things draw away from that necessary training time. I hope you guys are enjoying the video so far. If you are, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed, and let's move on. Now, something else that can lead to a loss from training camp mistakes is complacency. Myself, an example would be when I fought Sergey Adamchuk the second time, I went, okay, I have to draw back away from sparring because beating him is not about me doing lots of rounds, getting a really tough body, putting in all those sparring gauntlets or shark tanks. This is about strategy. This is about defeating him mentally. And it was a nice experience. Training camp was very nice. I didn't have to go in and do those hard rounds. Then next time when I fought Robin van Roosmalen, even though I knew I probably should have put in hard rounds, I went, you know what? I was successful against Adamchuk. I was the first guy to beat him in glory. I'm on top of the world. Nobody's going to beat me right now. And I got complacent with the idea that I don't need to put in hard rounds. Obviously, a massive mistake. One I don't want you guys making. So if you have something in your training camp, something that makes you comfortable, and you're feeling complacent, you're feeling like, okay, you know what? I'm not really challenging myself in the same way that I have in the past, or maybe that I need to, it's time to move on. It's time to push yourself. And the same thing can go even if you're at a gym. And you're like, you know what? Every time I go in for my sparring sessions, there's no real nerves. I'm not really scared. There's nobody who's challenging me. It's time to go somewhere else and find new sparring partners who are going to challenge you, who can push you. Because again, as soon as you get complacent with the information you're being taught, with the training drills you're doing, with your sparring partners, with the clench work, with the ferociousness of the pad work, anything that gets sort of humdrum and you're like, yeah, it's not that hard, it's not challenging me, like it's pretty hard, but it's not as hard as it could be, that's being complacent. That is going to end up pushing you towards those losses instead of towards those victories. These are all small, finite details that you guys might not think about, which are so important, whether it's your first fight, your 10th fight, your 50th fight, and you're going for the biggest title in the world. These can happen to everybody. Although more for your first fight, we're looking at things like make sure you get your sparring rounds in, make sure you do really hard pad work, make sure you work on your defense. Those are sort of the basics, which a lot of people miss. This is more for the guys, I guess, who are a little further on, who are really wanting to iron out their career and really get on top of things. Maybe you've had 3 or 4 fights and you're like, I really want to avoid making mistakes because I want to go for that world title, that North American title, that title within my country. Everything I talked about today, you get these details down, they're going to help you make you the best fighter you can possibly be and avoid making mistakes, avoid making the same errors I have in the past, which have led to a couple of my losses. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel and get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard, especially after this episode. Hard, hard, hard. And I'll see you back here soon for another video.